Hey, greetings, everyone. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here, and welcome to the Steadfast and Loyal program.
You gotta light them up before they burn it down. Better dig deep and put them in the ground. Blood on their hands, they're hellbound. Save us all. Ooh, they're gonna burn it down. Save us all before they burn it down.
Well, it's over. I mean, literally, it's over. I think a lot of people are happy that now they don't have to see all of those incessant commercials. They get all the text messages and all this stuff. Life can kind of go back to some semblance of normality. And what are we talking about? Of course, you know what we're talking about, the 2024 presidential election cycle. And I'm just really glad about the fact that we're not sitting around Thursday, Friday, Saturday, still waiting. Okay, are we there yet? Are we there yet? Do we have results yet? I mean, can you believe that some people are saying, it may take a week, it may be a month. We may not know even until January of next year. I mean, that really is insulting to the American people, especially in the age of technology, AI, and all of these things, to say that we can't figure out an election in election day before the sun comes up the next day. You know, the Fifth Circuit Courts of Appeals, United States Fifth Circuit Courts of Appeals, ruled that election day is election day, that 24-hour period, first Tuesday in November. And I'm of the mindset, maybe we need to start looking at making that a national holiday so that there is no excuse. And I think that also we need to start looking at, we got to get some of this stuff under control. Ballot drop boxes. Look how well that worked out with people going around and firebombing the suckers. Would totally erode my confidence. Unless you put some former, Green Beret, Delta Force, Navy SEALs, Marine Force Recon, Air Force Special Ops. You put some of those guys out there 24/7, 365. But why are we having ballot drop boxes? Like, here, drop your mail in, drop your ballot in. It's secure. It's just sitting here in the open. Now, I think we got to rethink some of these things. And some of the issues that we saw here in Dallas County with electronic poll books malfunctioning, the inability to reconcile the poll books to the manual sign-in roster, some of the ballots being flipped in the express votes, some of the tabulation machines not tabulating correctly, a lot of spoiled ballots being misprinted as they came out. Why can't we just have hand-counted paper ballots? Why can't we just vote in precinct like my mommy and daddy did and reconcile right there in that precinct? They have a list of people in that precinct that has been reviewed. Okay, we need to get to that. And think about the absurdity of the Biden-Harris Department of Justice bringing a lawsuit against a sovereign state, the Commonwealth of Virginia, who says that we want to make sure non-citizens are voting in our election. We're going to remove them from the list. You can't do that. Really? Isn't that a threat to democracy? To have non-citizens voting? But it's over. It's done. We knew about it that night because it was a decisive election. It was, like we say down south, you take someone behind the woodshed. There was no doubt about it. Donald Trump won the popular vote, and of course, he smashed through the Electoral College. Time to move on. But the real question is, can the left move on? They don't have the White House. They don't have the Senate. They don't have the House of Representatives. There's a 6-3 majority of conservatives in the Supreme Court. That means we can get back to the constitutional governance, rule of law. And it was so funny. I heard Gayle King on CBS say, well, what happens with checks and balances if the Republicans are in control of all these things? You never hear the left, the Democrats, ask that question when they're in control. I mean, Barack Obama started out, he had the White House, he had the Senate, pretty evenly split Supreme Court. Because remember, during Obama's time periods, when they got through this whole gay marriage thing, I didn't know that the Supreme Court was all into saying who can get married. I thought states granted marriage licenses, but again, activist judges. So now all of a sudden we have to be worried about, those Republicans, those people that we call Nazis, extremists, because they believe in the Constitution. They believe in, restrictive government. They believe in what is written there. We have things that we should be doing. They believe that states have, some power based upon this thing called federalism. They believe that we don't give them their rights. They believe in this natural rights theory. They're bad people. Well, guess what? All of that is the reason why they lost. So what I want to kind of do in today's program is go through the anatomy of a debacle. Because I can tell you within 12 hours, maybe even less than that, Democrats are already pointing fingers. And many of them are pointing fingers at the people that came out and didn't vote for them. I mean, to say that Black men and Hispanic men are racist and sexist because they did not vote for Kamala Harris, Vice President Harris, that's absurd. First and foremost, Joe Biden said, if you don't vote for me, you're not even Black. So that leaves us to wonder what, we are. But maybe it was because of the policies. Maybe it was because of all the things that have happened in the past 3.5 and 4 years that you lost them. Maybe you should get that memo. My oldest daughter, Aubrey, has a friend who sent her a little email message saying that I can't believe that 71 million plus people don't think that I have rights. And it was very troubling for Aubrey because this is one of her close friends who happens to live in Minnesota. And so Aubrey came to me and said, what do I say? I said, just ask her, what rights did your vote for Donald Trump take away from her? See, it's about time we start to go on offense and challenge some of these absurdities that the other side is proliferating. But when you look at this anatomy of the debacle that happened on November the 5th of 2024, you got to go back and look at this entire Biden-Harris administration and all the things that they have done, many unconstitutional, such as opening up our border so that tens of millions of people can come here illegally. We have a drug trafficking crisis. We have a human and sex trafficking crisis. We have a terrorist trafficking crisis. The crime that we have, illegal immigrant criminal gangs, period. They should not be in this country killing our women. Maybe that's more of an important issue to women than dismembering a baby in the womb all the way up to the time of birth and even allowing the baby to be left to die. Laken Riley, she's gone. We just had here in Dallas about a month ago before the election, a woman that was abducted, taken into her own home by 4 members of the Venezuelan gang Tren de Aragua, beaten with a gun, threatened to have her fingers cut off, torture, and completely robbed in her own home in a very upscale part of Dallas, mind you. Do you think that all of a sudden dismembering babies in the womb up to the time of birth was her number one issue after that experience? Or even her friends who started to realize it's not safe out here? I cannot tell you how many women came up to me as chairman of the Dallas County Republican Party, said, hey, Colonel, if I get a gun, can you take me to the range and help me to understand how to use it? Sure. Their number one issue was not about dismembering babies in the womb. I also saw an email that says, I would be willing to pay $8 a gallon for gasoline or $800 a week at the grocery store as long as I have safety for my children and grandchildren. That's absurd. I mean, if you're part of the progressive socialist left and you want to pay $8 a gallon for gasoline, knock yourself out. Go find and adopt another family who is struggling and help them to pay their gas bill, help them to pay their utility bill, help them to pay their grocery bill. But don't think that I should be forced and you should impose that upon me for your ideological agenda. And oh, by the way, you want to talk about protecting children and grandchildren? I think dragging kids in front of drag shows, in front of sexual deviants, that ain't cool. I think saying that grown dadgum men and biological men and boys jumping in the pool, going in the locker rooms with our daughters and granddaughters, that ain't cool. And I'm sorry if I happen to be an alpha kind of guy, and I don't want to support that because I believe in protecting my wife, my daughters, my grandsons. Doesn't make me a racist. It just says that the woman that likes that policy of using my taxpayer dollars to enable people to all of a sudden decide that they don't want to be a guy, they want to be a girl, and they want me to pay for their therapies and surgeries and everything, I'm not down with that. Doesn't make me transphobic. Doesn't make me any of these other things that you want to label people. And so the anatomy of the debacle starts with the fact that you had, on the Democrat side, a purposeful and intentional agenda that people were able to see and decide they did not want to be a part of. No matter how much the media will come out and say, oh, forget your lying eyes. There's no issue with inflation. Economy's great. Oh, by the way, to have a jobs report to come out a week or two before the election saying that you only created 12,000 jobs in the previous month, and 2 months going back, we're going to revise downwards 112,000 jobs. And oh, by the way, back in August or September, we found out 818,000 jobs were just made up. People pay attention to that stuff. Alejandro Mayorkas, whatever it is. The border's secure. Nothing's going on here. Right. The media trying to cover that up and hide that up and all the lies. The policy failures, the lies. Us sitting back in real time and seeing a president who was in mental decline, but yet everybody's saying, don't worry about it. Everything's fine. That's how the anatomy of a debacle begins. Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, Steadfast and Lower Program. We'll be right back after these messages. Greetings, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. In my career, from the battlefield to Congress, honor and integrity have always been my compass. When it comes to building a precious metals portfolio for my family, I choose United Patriot Corn. Their commitment to honesty and transparency aligns with everything I stand for. They care about our great country and focus on serving patriots from all walks of life. They've teamed up with veterans of the precious metals market to create a new kind of gold dealer designed to serve the needs of a new type of gold buyer. And that's why I know I can trust them when it comes time to buy my gold and silver. If you value honesty and reliability as I do, then join me. Hey folks, Lieutenant Colonel Alan West here, Steadfast and Lower Program. Welcome back to the second segment of our program. And we're talking about the anatomy of a debacle because it was an absolute collapse for the Democrat Party this past 2024 presidential election cycle. We talked about the anatomy of that debacle, all the things that have led up to it in these 3.5 years, the lies being told by this administration, the unconstitutional actions, the lies being proliferated by the media who was doing everything they could to prop them up, being more of a Pravda media, the demonization, denigration, and disparaging way that they referred to people who just wanted to exercise their First Amendment rights, freedom of speech, freedom of expression, their freedom of conscience. No, only accepted speech, only accepted expression. Otherwise, you're a fascist. the policy failures that we saw. I mean, there was peace in the world. Abraham Accords. Everything was going fine in the Middle East. Now, all of a sudden, we're learning about Hamas, Houthis, Hezbollah, Islamic Jihad, all of this stuff. That didn't happen in the previous administration with President Trump. But what was really the turning point in this anatomy of a debacle that got them on the road to perdition that ended on November the 5th of 2024 for the Democrat Party? Mark it on your calendars, June the 27th of 2024. The left thought they were cute. Biden-Harris administration thought they were smart. We're going to challenge Donald Trump to some debates early on, before we even get to the Republican convention, before definitely we get to the Democrat convention. We're going to have it in June. Everybody's probably going to be on summer vacation, not going to pay attention, not tuned in. Boy, were they wrong. And what did people see on June the 27th of 2024? They saw everything that they knew was true. That, again, coming back to the media lies and the lies of the administration, a president in mental decline. I'll never forget when Donald Trump said, I don't know what he just said, and I don't think that Joe knows what he just said. I mean, when Joe Biden stands up there and says, we've destroyed Medicare and all the other rambling, bumbling, we haven't lost any troops on my watch as president, completely disregarding the 13 who lost their lives in Afghanistan. Talk about a debacle. That sent the Democrats into the next phase of this anatomy of a debacle, into complete panic mode. What do? Joe Biden is now a laughingstock. The world now, the cat's out the bag. People have looked around behind the veil. We can't lie about this anymore. This was public. Tens of millions of people saw this, not just in the United States of America, but across the globe. Even the media started to challenge President Biden about his mental acuity. So what do the Democrats decide? I mean, they had pretty much locked everybody else out in this quote unquote primary process. See, they can say everybody else is a threat to democracy, but when it comes to them, they can have a completely undemocratic primary process, trying to remove a viable candidate like a Robert F. Kennedy Jr. from contention to the point where he has to go off and become an independent. I forget the guy who was running from Minnesota. He was a member of Congress, completely disregarded him. But now they're in panic mode. So what do? Do all of a sudden now we come back and say, let's try to have a mini primary before we get to our convention. Let's maybe have a mini primary at the convention. What are we going to do? Oh, we'll just take the most unpopular vice president of the most unpopular administration, and we're just going to make her tag, you're it. You're the nominee. You don't have to go through a primary process. You don't have to worry about getting anyone to vote for you or support you. As a matter of fact, the last time we saw Vice President Harris as a candidate, she quit before they even got to a primary race, and that was back in 2019, going into the 2020 election cycle. That's all we knew. We knew that she was not up front. We knew that she was not the type of person that was talking about policy decisions. We knew she had like a 93 to 94% staff turnover as a vice president. No major policy decisions, but according to her, she was part of all the major policy decisions. So now all of a sudden, all the cash, all the delegates just get dumped into the lap of someone that was completely untested, unproven, Kamala Harris. And the media gets told, make her successful. All the things that they should have been asking about, nope, not going to do it. Yay, she's great. Yay, first black woman president. Yay, little DEI stuff going on, affirmative action. And you will obey. And I guess they thought that we've got the American people trapped because if they don't vote for her, they'll be racist, they'll be sexist. We can just browbeat them to death about that. Joy, aspiration, joy. Every time I get asked a question, well, I was born a middle-class child. Kind of reminds me of Steve Martin from the movie The Jerk. I was just born a poor black child in Mississippi. Didn't get anything. But now all of a sudden, you have this coronation, this media-supported entity. And I remember all of this joy and euphoria. She's going to bring us joy. I feel good about Kamala. This was like joke cola. As a matter of fact, you can go back. I wrote a town hall piece about that, calling Kamala Harris the joke cola candidate. If you don't remember joke cola, please go back and read about it. But joke cola was the precursor to Red Bull and all these other energy drinks. I remember drinking joke cola, doing, exams week at the University of Tennessee. Boy, you'd be wired. But you know what happened on the backside when the joke cola effect wore off? Man, you crashed hard. And that's what I told people. All of this euphoria, all of this little bump and everything that you saw, it was going to fade away. There's no doubt about it. I mean, Kamala Harris, if there's any kind of way to describe her, she's like a cloud. I sit down with my grandson, Jackson. We have great conversations now. He's 3. And we just sometimes lay back and we just look up at the clouds, try to figure out shapes of the clouds. See, you can see a cloud. But as you know, when you're in an airplane, you can just fly right through a cloud. There's no substance to it. It's visible, but there's no firmament. That's what we would come to find out about a person that had everything dropped in her lap. No scrutiny, no vetting, no nothing. But you will obey. Because if you don't, you're a racist and you're a sexist. And after all, don't you want joy? Don't you want aspirations? I remember when, what's her name? Oprah Winfrey came out and talked about how Barack Obama was just brilliant. Brilliant. He proved not to be. He was a very shrewd politician, an incredible aura about him, but again, an empty suit. And that's what we got with Kamala Harris, completely unversed on the issues, even though she has been the vice president for 3.5 years. And she keeps telling us how she's been involved in all of these decisions, but she can't articulate anything. I remember when she was asked what would be one of the first things you would do as president, one of the first executive orders. I would take on, what did she say? Kind of like the way, the price of goods. She was going to actually do an executive order that would lower the cost of living. How does an executive order lower my cost of living? Or with the whole thing about inflation, which too much money going after too little goods and services, and going after the oil and gas industry. That's what the Biden Harris administration did. You increase the cost of transporting goods and services, and that means that inflationary cost gets passed on to consumers. That's why it went up to 9.1%. She said inflation was all about price gouging. Now, all of a sudden, we're supposed to believe that people are going to sit back and say, let's raise the prices of eggs. Just absurd. And there was started to be these things. And I think she went 30 days almost, no talking to the media, just trying to ride that wave all the way through. Why? Because pretty much so in her entire life, that's what had happened. You're a Democrat in California. You don't have to put in any effort to win an election out there. District attorney, attorney general, senator. And then, Joe Biden basically says you're a DEI hire as his vice president. Got to have a black woman, just like Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Got to have a black woman. Can't speak out against that. You're racist, you're sexist. So everything has been dropped in the lap. Never had to work hard for it. Just getting rid of your staff left and right. So nobody's going in and briefing her. She's not up on any of these things, although she says she's in on every major decision. But she can't articulate solutions. So the American people start to pay attention to that. And furthermore, people that we're paying attention to, she's not talking about rectifying the situation and the issues and the problems that I'm facing. She was never a border czar. Okay, roll tape, everybody. Border czar, border czar, border czar, border czar, border czar, border czar, border czar. And she goes to a port of entry in El Paso, never been to the border. Although she finally decides, I better go there for a little photo op for 30 minutes down in Arizona. I've been to the border. I've been in the bushes. You can talk to the fellas down there in Kenny County, Texas, in Bracketville. They can tell you the old colonel's been out there walking in the bush. Showing up and for a photo op, that's not going to the border. So the anatomy of the debacle began when we start to realize this is a cloud that wants to be president of the United States. Colonel Allen West, Steadfast and Loyal program. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey folks, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West here at Watchtower Firearms. This is the custom design AR-15 that was just made for me. It's got my Steadfast and Loyal logo there. On this side, you can see my signature, my master parachutist wings, of course, American flag. And I just want to tell you that you can't be a great American unless you have a great American weapon. And that's exactly what Watchtower Firearms is building. Great American weapons, all American parts, manufactured right here in the great state of Texas. And oh, by the way, let me see, where is the serial number on this one? TX 1836. If you're from Texas, I think you know what that means. God bless you. God bless Watchtower.
Hit, dead center. Yes.
Hey, welcome back, folks. Steadfast and Loyal program, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, segment 3. We finished talking about the next aspect of the anatomy of the debacle when they all of a sudden went into panic mode because Joe Biden completely had a meltdown on June the 27th of 2024 in that presidential debate against Donald Trump. They didn't know what to do. They had backed themselves in a corner, and they decided to select the most unpopular vice president of the most unpopular administration. See, Kamala Harris, I don't know if she got too far over her skis or what, but she sealed her own fate. The first aspect of this anatomy of the debacle where she sealed her own fate, Tim Walz, Tim doggone Walz. I mean, Tim, there's another word that people are using, Waltz. No one vetted this guy. No one said, let's look into his background. Tim dadgum Waltz from Minnesota. Let me tell you, I'm going to be very honest. I don't know if it would have made a big difference, but I think it would have made a little bit of a difference. You stepped over Josh Shapiro, the governor in Pennsylvania, which maybe if Kamala had won, she gets 8 years. Josh Shapiro steps in, get another 8 years. That's 16 years. Tim Walz? The anatomy of the debacle is that when you show the poor decision-making skills of picking someone that was an anchor about your leg, and you're trying to tread water in the Atlantic Ocean, that's what Tim Walz was. And why not pick Josh Shapiro? Because the progressive socialist leftists own this Democrat Party. And they're aligned with that pro-Hamas group. We see that. We saw it all over college campuses, university campuses. Joe Biden there at the Democrat convention saying those people out there protesting have a point. What point do they have? Hamas is an Islamic terrorist organization whose charter says they are all about the destruction, the eradication, the elimination, the extermination, not just of the state of Israel, but Jews everywhere. And you guys called the Trump rally in Madison Square Garden a bunch of Nazis? Hamas are just like the Nazis. And people running around carrying the terrorist flag of Hamas, ripping the American flag down and raising that terrorist flag, not a peep out of Vice President Harris. And then you go and pick someone that, look, let's be very honest. My dad was a combat veteran, World War II. My father-in-law, 2 combat tours of duty in Vietnam. He's buried in Arlington National Cemetery. My older brother, combat veteran, United States Marine Corps, Charlie Company, 1st Battalion, 26 Marines, wounded at Khe Sanh. I was in Desert Shield, Desert Storm. I was in Iraq. Even after retiring, I volunteered to go to Afghanistan as a civilian military advisor. I've been in some combat zones. My nephew, 3 combat tours. You pick a person that was the senior enlisted man in an artillery battalion, Miss Harris. And when he gets the notification that his unit is to deploy to Iraq, he turns coat and quits. It's called a coward, a deserter. You really want to put it in harsher terms. Bo Bergdahl was a deserter in a combat zone. Tim Walz, he deserted before he had to go to the combat zone. And this whole thing about he had to do it in order to run for a congressional election, that's not true. He was in the reserve component. He was in the National Guard. He could have done both. He could have submitted a letter. Because guess what? Tulsi Gabbard, she was in the National Guard in Hawaii. She was a congresswoman from Hawaii. And the ties to China, and you look at the economy and some of the things he's put in place. You look at how in Minnesota you can dismember a baby in the womb up until the time of birth, and 5 babies have been left to die after surviving that heinous procedure. That's infanticide. But that's who Kamala Harris picked to be her vice presidential nominee, a self-proclaimed knucklehead. That's what he called himself. I'm just a knucklehead. Maybe some of you guys are not old enough to remember Gomer Pyle, but I remember Sergeant Carter always referring to Gomer Pyle as a knucklehead. I don't want Gomer Pyle as the vice president of the United States of America. I do not want a coward being second in line as commander-in-chief of the United States Armed Forces, which when you look at Article 2 of the Constitution, that's the main title of the president of the United States of America, a coward, a communist Chinese sympathizer. That's who Kamala Harris picked as the vice presidential running mate. Boop. Bad. Check box number 1. Second, check in the box. Finally, she decides to do a sit-down interview. And of course she does it. She's got to have her little whoopee, Tim Walz, there with her, who looked completely befuddled. Kind of like how he did with that deer in the headlights look during his vice presidential debate with J.D. Vance. But Dana Bash of CNN asked her a very simple question. And it was just amazing to me when she's sitting there in this interview and she says, my values haven't changed. Okay. Because she was responding to the question about being a flip-flopper. So who are you? What does that mean? Are these the values of 2019? All the things that you said when you were on that candidate's platform to be the Democrat nominee for president in 2020? If your values haven't changed, then just say that. Don't come out and talk about all of these things. I'm a change candidate. We're going to turn the page. No, you're not. You're saying your values haven't changed. Boop. Check that box. But the last box that did seal the fate for Kamala Harris was when she was on The View. Sympathetic, easy crowd. I mean, come on. If you had asked them, what are you going to ask me? They would have just put it on a 3x5 card, put it in your lap. Here we are. This is what we're going to ask you. Sonny Hostin asked Vice Presidential Harris, is there anything that you would do differently from President Biden and the current administration? I can't think of anything. No, I wouldn't do anything differently. There are no regrets. Boop. Check box number 3. Tim Walz, my values haven't changed. There's nothing I'd do differently from the Biden administration. Done. That played on loops all over the place. That's what people saw. That's what people came to understand. She's not a change candidate. She's not turning the page. She's the same old, same old. And furthermore, she can't articulate any issues. She can't articulate any solutions. She thinks that inflation is a matter of price gouging. She's going to do an executive order to reduce the cost of living. And all of a sudden, it changes. No more joy. No more aspiration. No more happy to glad talk. Now I got to demonize you. I got to talk bad about you. I got to talk about what people should be voting against, not people should be voting for. Because there's nothing to vote for in me, Kamala Harris. My values haven't changed. I would do nothing different from the Biden administration. At the point when she could have separated herself, she did not. So what's left? The old typical identity politics and negative politics. The Saul Alinsky politics of personal destruction. And it's not just in the candidate himself, Donald Trump. It's in all of the supporters. The bitter people clinging to their guns and religion, the basket of deplorables. And now all of a sudden, well, you got garbage, you got Hitler, you got Nazis, you got extremists, all of these things. And this is all after the man has been shot. And there was a second assassination attempt that was foiled. We got to tamp down the rhetoric. We got to be careful about these things. Wink, wink. Twisted fingers behind my back. It's about by any means necessary. And the ends, which means retaining power, justify the means. So if Donald Trump barely survives a headshot, he's still a dictator, still a Nazi. Donald Trump all of a sudden survives the foil attempt, and we release the letter of this second assassin who basically says, if I fail, please go out there and continue to try. That letter was decided to be released by the Biden-Harris Department of Justice. Why? Because it's all about the politics of personal destruction, meaning the ultimate personal destruction. And then we had all of the entertainers coming out. Like people who cannot afford eggs really care about what Bruce Springsteen says or Beyonce. And let me tell you how offensive and condescending it was for Kamala Harris to come here to Houston, Texas, the place where Jocelyn Nungary, a 12-year-old girl, was brutally raped and murdered, body thrown under a bridge down by one of the bayous down there by two members of a Venezuelan gang, Trinidad. She goes to Houston, Texas, doesn't even go by to say a peep to the family of Jocelyn Nungary, but she's hanging out with Beyonce. Kamala Harris sealed her own fate. Picking Tim Walz, saying my values haven't changed. saying there's nothing I would do differently from the Biden administration, switching from all the joy and aspiration because she realized that her ship was sinking, going to the negative, going to the identity politics, and hanging out with entertainment elites. Final segment of the Steadfast and Lower program coming right after this message. Hey, folks, Lieutenant Colonel Allen West, last segment of this episode of the Steadfast and Lower program. Post-election, November the 5th, 2024, the anatomy of a debacle. We've talked about everything that led up to this, the failures, policy failures, the lies, the mental failings of President Biden, the lack of any issue, understanding, and knowledge of Kamala Harris. But then June 27th, 2024, that debate between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, they can't hide it anymore. Then they panic, they go to Kamala Harris. Everything seems good to go, joy and aspiration. But then it falls apart when everybody realizes that Kamala Harris is just a cloud. And so they have to go negative. And going negative didn't work because the American people aren't concerned about being threatened and intimidated and coerced into voting for someone that does not have their principles and values, that just wants power. A front person who was really behind that veil, like in The Wizard of Oz. So, who are the real big losers, without a doubt, coming out of November the 5th, 2024? Kamala Harris is a big loser. If there's one thing you notice about the left, the Democrat Party, you screw up, you lose, they get rid of you. Al Gore never ran again. John Kerry never ran again. Hillary Clinton never ran again. Joe Biden ain't going to run again. He couldn't remember where to run to. Kamala Harris is not going to ever run for anything again. She's done politically. Maybe she'll get a spot on The View. Maybe she'll do a cooking show. I mean, what was that she said? That she would like cook something in the tub? Collard greens. She washed her collard greens in the tub. Let me tell you something. I'm from down south, lady. I ain't never seen anybody wash some collard greens in a tub. Okay? That's nuts. So maybe it'd be a bad idea for you to have a cooking show. So what's she going to do? Speaking circuit? What is she going to talk about? And if you watched her quote unquote concession speech the following day after, which she was 30 minutes late to giving, so promptness is not an issue for her, she didn't get the memo. She kept talking about fight for the things that we fought for in this campaign. You got rejected. The useful idiots and mindless lemmings that followed you down the yellow brick road, it's over. You didn't make it to the land of Oz. So where did she go? I don't know. But she's the biggest of the losers. Who's another big loser? Barack Hussein Obama. Barack Hussein Obama also sealed Kamala Harris's fate. When he all of a sudden believes that he is empowered, skinny little Delta male, to come down and tell black men, you better get out there and vote for her. You're a bunch of sexists. If you don't, I think you got a problem with women. So let me bring Michelle down here on you. Like, okay, I'm really supposed to be intimidated now. No. I don't have to vote just because. And you're not going to coerce me into doing it just because. You don't hold any power over me. The legacy of Barack Hussein Obama is over. The guy that had so much promise going back to 2008, who completely squandered it and blew it, who brought in so much division and divisiveness. I mean, it's really, hypocritical of him to talk about division when he said things like, you have to punish your political enemy. You should never bring a knife to a gunfight. Republicans can get on the bus, but they can get to the back of the bus. That's Barack Hussein Obama, the acolyte of Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals. Saul Alinsky was from Chicago, too. Something's up with that place. So he's done. Because no one is going to be owing themselves to him 4 years from now. I mean, I want you to really think about something. When was the last time you saw a sitting United States president, been president for 2 terms, 8 years, and he stays in Washington, D.C., not far from the White House? I mean, Harry Truman was just so convinced. He got in his car with his wife, and he drove himself back to Missouri. He's like, I'm out of here. Barack Obama saying, no, I'm going to stay right here. I mean, Barack Obama felt that, I get another chance to get my peeps into another presidential administration. Remember what he said when he was on his way out? What was that, December 2015? If I could just have someone up there with a little earpiece in, and I could be sitting back there and telling them what to say, that'd be a good arrangement. He said that on CBS 60 Minutes. That's what's been going on. He's been the one running things behind the scene. Biden was his vice president. And I truly believe he got forced into the thing with Kamala Harris. But then when he realized that his own self-preservation was at risk, well, he came out strong. He came out hard. When you saw him and Michelle speak at the Democrat convention earlier this year, this was all about, I'm the king. This is the queen of this party. Not no more. And that's one of the things that the Democrat Party has to look at now. Who's going to be their leader? Who's going to be the voice? Kamala Harris ain't it. Trust me. B. Hussein Obama, Barry Soetoro, the man of many names. I think he's lost his shine, his polish. So who's going to step up? Because right now they're pointing fingers. Well, it's Joe Biden's fault. It's Kamala's fault. It's this fault. It's that fault. They don't want to sit down and just say it's our messaging fault. We have come out completely on the wrong side of the principles and values of this constitutional republic. We really don't even like America. In many ways, they say that. Their actions definitely do say that. There are some people in the Democrat Party that realize their party's gone off the rails. I would not be surprised if you see more people defecting from the Democrat Party. Remember Tulsi Gabbard? She was on the stage running for president as a Democrat. Elon Musk, Democrat. Joe Rogan, Democrat. Donald Trump used to be a Democrat. Donald Trump used to be pro-choice. Only president to ever speak at the March for Life, Donald Trump. Ronald Reagan. I didn't leave the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party left me. See, if they don't start doing some serious soul searching, which they won't do, because that's the nature of radicals, Marxists, socialists, communists, statists, whatever you want to refer to, centralized government control people. They just think you don't understand. You don't get it. We got to browbeat you some more. We got to call you some more names. We got to shame you even more. Just like the little note that I saw that my oldest daughter shared with me. Just unfriend me. Sure. Happy to do so. Because you're not going to impose your ideological agenda and will on me, which is an anti-freedom agenda. Naomi Wolf, someone that we had on our program here. I mean, here's a woman that was one of the top feminists in the feminist movement. She worked for Clinton. She worked for Gore. I'm out of here. I'm voting for this guy Trump. But now all of a sudden the left is mad at her because they thought all women, college educated, especially white women, were supposed to just fall in line. Who else are some of the big losers? Liz Cheney and Adam Kinzinger. Please just go away. I mean, you really showed your butts and no one cares anymore. Just go ahead and say you're one of them, a progressive, a socialist, a Marxist, warmonger, whatever you want to call yourself. But don't continue to go around with this charade that I'm a Republican. No, you're not. You're an opportunist. You put your hatred of an individual above the love of country. Some will call that a traitor. So just move on, because what was that? A man without a country, a man with whatever. You're a person without a political party. So move on. The propaganda media, who told so many lies after lies after lies in this presidential election cycle, and continue to tell lies. Last night, you got to flip over to MSNBC or CNN and listen to them. How could people not understand that the economy is great? Oh, we just had a jobs report of 12,000. How can people not understand that, egg prices are not the most important thing? It's important if you want to eat. How can people not understand that, we've been, producing more, energy? Then why are the gasoline prices how they are? And why are we 50 to 60% decrease in the strategic petroleum reserve? Because we've been selling it to China. Why are we going to beg and borrow from Saudi Arabia and Venezuela when we have all these energy resources here? We're not energy independent anymore. Port Arthur, Texas used to be the #1 export facility for liquefied natural gas. Biden-Harris administration put a moratorium on it. They continue to tell lies. Big loser. Propaganda pollsters got it wrong. The Iowa poll this woman put out the weekend before the presidential election said Kamala Harris was ahead 3 to 4 points in Iowa. She lost by 20. GOP, Republican Party, congratulations. You had a big win. Now what are you going to do with it? Told you, getting out to vote early will work in our favor. Don't sit around and wait and lock yourself into that one election day, because then they can have all kind of crazy stuff that happens. It's going to be a bumpy ride going forward. I expect a scorched earth policy here in the last 2 months of the Biden-Harris administration. But as Ronald Reagan once said, it's morning in America again. Steadfast and loyal.
Before they burn it down.